Hi, here we are back again with a wonderful discourse with Wendy and Janet, and we're talking about neurodevelopment. Today, we're going to be talking about body, space, sense. Okay, and we're going to define that and talk a little bit about that today. It's such an important inner sense. And first, I want to introduce Wendy. Thank you for coming, Wendy. She is a wonderful practitioner at Sense Enabled in Seattle and very experienced with neurodevelopment. And I am a good friend, associate, and person known her most for life, Janet Oliver, and I am at Plan for Learning and Living in the Minneapolis area, and I travel all over the world. So we have a great relationship because we know each other well, and I would like to just introduce what we're going to talk about a little bit first. Proprioception is another name for this body, space, sense, but in our work, we sometimes run into problems that that's too limited, or it's too misunderstood, or it's too big a word, to be honest. So what we like to call it, I like to call it body, space, sense. And somebody one time explained it to me as the way our body is in space, okay? Our awareness of our body in space. So our physical body, where the things are in our body, and also how our body reacts to other things in space and learns about space, as well as inside of our body, how things feel in our body. Today we're going to be working about just the body map itself, the outer body, and some of the things we see when there's issues with that, as well as how you might be able to check to see whether a person you know has trouble with this, and also maybe some ways that developmentally, typical development, we typically develop this through life, and maybe a couple things we could do beyond that. So what do you think, Wendy? You want to start out? Well, maybe I'll start again with the definition a little bit better. Proprioception is usually thought of as information coming in through the joints, the proprioceptors in the joints that we have in our bodies. And there are deep tactile receptors in our joints that tell our brain where we are in space. So even if I close my eyes, I know I have my fingers pointed up and I have my hands in a fist, right? I can feel that. Why can I feel it? Because I have these proprioceptors, tactile receptors telling my body what's going on. But there's a lot more to proprioception than that. There is, it goes with the gravity sense, where we are, we going to fall one way or the other. Also, it goes with the visual, because that gives us a lot of information about where we are in space. Audio, which gives us information where we are in space. Even smell tells us where we are in space. So that is important. It's such an important sense, though, because I really have found that one of the main things we see when people have weak, inefficient sense of body in space is generalized anxiety. Okay, if you don't know where you are, your brain is constantly asking, where am I, where am I, where am I? And so that is something that we see when a person, and we talk about children a lot, but really this is any age. It doesn't have to be just children, that's for sure. If you just don't really feel settled in yourself, you just don't feel like you're in your body completely, that is usually a weak body space sense. So Wendy, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the ideas we were talking about before we started this, that had to do with what we see with people or children who have inefficient or non-working body and space sense.
I think the one thing that most people can recognize pretty readily is the person who comes up and they stand right up in your face, or they need to touch you. You know, they're talking to you and they're constantly touching you. And these people kind of get labeled as creepy, but it's that not having a sense of what is too close, what is the distance between us. They're doing the touch to orient themselves where they're at in space. They may want to lean up against you. They're the kids that want to lay in your lap all the time, the people that need deep pressure hugs, to kind of tell them where they're at. Where's their body? Where's their body?
Yeah, but you even need someone to sleep with them in bed, or be up against them, or pack themselves in with pillows or something so they can feel where they are, because they can't relax.
Right? It's the kids who have the heavy blankets in the middle of the summer, or the adults that have 4 comforters on the bed in July, right? Or the mountains of stuffies, right? You just always have something. You want something touching you. The kids that like their clothes really tight because it gives them edges. Now I know where my body's at. I've got an edge. So that's, I think, one of the things that people can recognize pretty easily. The kids
I always say it's the kid at the bottom of the pig pile, the one who
Yeah.
wants to be at the bottom of the pig pile, the one that's too rough with other people because they like it. They wish people would be that rough with them. They don't see it as a
Right.
problem. They want people to push them, shove them down. I mean, to them, that's fun.
Well,
So they
it's,
really
yeah,
like that hard action on their body.
it's the kids who have the wild body, right? We call it wild body. The kids that are throwing themselves into things, the kids that are always, or the people, the adults that are even, always bumping into people, right? Or bumping into things because you don't have that sense of how much space is between me and that object. Your spatial judgment.
We're going to be talking about that next one, but
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to talk about with this is that developmentally, all children to some degree have a developing body and space sense. So that's
Right.
what we call them kids. I always say we call them kids because baby goats like to, bang into each other and jump on each other. And that's where those words came from, because kids are developing this sense. They're not 100%, but to be calm, to be in a space without having to lean on stuff, touch stuff, bang on stuff, press against stuff. That's what we're going for. And it's hard in school when you have these kind of things. People used to understand that a little bit better. But this starts pretty early on, this developmental sense. It even starts in utero, to be honest, because there's a lot of stretching and pushing in utero as well as the reflexes that start, the primitive reflexes that are start in utero. And so that's some of the beginning ways that we start. But even the birth process itself, are the squeezing and the pushing out of a natural birth is actually activating a lot of those proprioceptors in our bodies.
Right.
And so people have C-sections, there's nothing wrong with that. We want living babies, we always do, but when you come out, your proprioceptors have not been turned on. That's why so many people now are very wise after C-section to give their body, the babies, the firm pressure massages for babies, because if you didn't have that coming out, you really do need it to activate those proprioceptors. Otherwise, you're going to have a little more trouble with that in space. And then, of course, babies start pushing off, pushing on things, the reflexes that get all the different joints differentiated in the body. So in these first 3 months, there's so much going on to develop that. There's so many places where it gets missed in modern life.
Well, and to do the swaddling, the babies that they don't calm down until they've been swaddled. You've got that tight kind of pressure, right? When you swaddle them, and they find that comforting. I think the other point I'd like to make before we move on too far is when you see kids going through a growth spurt, you'll see their proprioception off. They're knocking things over because all of a sudden that body has changed, that space has changed, those proprioceptors have changed. So you'll see that kind of discomfort with the proprioception, the body sense, when people have a growth spurt.
And I would say that a lot of times, because teens are going into a whole different part of their life, we do see some dysphoria sometimes, and it's not always sexual dysphoria. Sometimes it's just, I don't want this body. I don't belong to this body. We see that a lot during that time because the body's growing so fast that the brain cannot keep up with it and doesn't identify it very well or very easily. And that's why athletics and things with teens is really, really important. Dance or something where they're using your body in an organized way really is important, because that's how that, again, you get through that period. And again, in modern life, how many kids do much of anything? Maybe nothing at all. So,
well, and if you don't have that feeling of groundedness in your own body, then it does feed into that sense of anxiety. If you don't feel grounded and you don't feel secure in yourself, then it's really hard to present a confident, facade to the outer world.
Because even wake you up at night. If your brain doesn't know where you are and can't feel you, it sets off an alarm, an anxiety alarm, and people wake up in the middle of the night at an alarm state because they don't know why, because it wasn't a message directly, but turning or moving or putting on a light or putting on sound or something helps the body orient where it is in space, and therefore
Right.
can often sleep better with that. So
White noise kind of thing. A fan.
yeah, I was trying to see if I missed anything in here. One thing, I sometimes check people for issues with proprioception or with body space sense, and we have a couple things we do with that. But one time it's as simple as with some children have them close their eyes and just touch your nose, with your eyes closed. When you close your eyes, see, a lot of people use their eyes to tell where they are in space.
Yeah, they
So
are.
you have to look at the person speaking, or they have to look at what they're doing. You have to look at everything, because you can't just do it without looking, because that would take a body map that they would be able to understand what was going on. So when you close your eyes, you really are checking really deeply whether it's body space sense. So one of the things we sometimes do is just take a piece of paper, have the person close their eyes, and then just have them write their name or write their telephone number or write something maybe they're not as familiar with too, and
Right.
feel that. How does that feel? We call that tuning in. How did that feel to you? And Wendy, what do they often say when they're having weak body and space sense? Or
They say it doesn't feel good. They say they can't tell, they think they've done it right, and then they look at what they've written, and they're surprised at what it looks like,
or
because
they'll
to them,
say, "Ooh, that felt weird." I get that a lot.
or
Oh, that
that's,
felt
yeah,
weird. And
and
sometimes it's
that's
better
what
than they thought it would be too. Like,
yeah,
oh, I thought it was like, really distorted, and really it looked okay. So either way, it's like really they did it quite well, but they didn't think it looked well, or
well,
they did.
yeah. So what'll happen is their image of what they thought they did and what they actually did on the page is very different. There'll be a real disconnect between what they felt they did and what they see.
Yeah, and what I sometimes do in audiences, because I speak all over the country, and that I sometimes have the audience, because I just love doing this in the evening, because in the evening everyone's all tired, and tiredness also makes your body space sense not working quite as efficiently as it used to be. That's why more accidents happen when you're tired, because your
Right.
your body map's slipping a little, right? So I have somebody put their hand above their head, take their other hand, close their eyes, and then put their fingers together, see, overhead. See how I missed a little bit? I've had people who've actually poked themselves in the eye doing that. Okay, that's how bad it can be. So you can really get off with your body mapping that way. But that you can do it with both hands, with both, and then if you want to try with your eyes open, you can find out that, oh, how much I use my eyes. Because
Right.
eyes, even if you're not looking at your hands doing it, you're still going to do better, because you can get a sense of the space and your relationship to it. So that's part of
Right.
that. Mhm.
Yeah.
You have anything else to say about maybe checking or understanding maybe in someone's life where they might see this?
I think we've kind of covered it. I think the thing that
Oh, I have some.
comes to mind is the way it has the emotional social implications
Oh,
and the
huge.
behavioral implications. What you see in a classroom is the kid that doesn't get to play with other people because he's too
Or
get the, like I said before, it's the person who's considered creepy because they want to touch you and they're standing too close.
there's jostling.
I think what we sometimes we get so wrapped up in what we're seeing in the body, we forget that this has an emotional, societal, behavioral piece, and I think it has broader implications because of that, which is why it's not just about being more comfortable in your own body, but it's being able to interact with other people in a more functional way. And
Theory says that our mirror neurons that help us understand emotions and stuff that people are experiencing develop through some of these the body space sense. It's a complicated relationship, but if I can't feel it in my own body or on my own body, or I see their face going and I can't imagine what that's like, I can't really understand what the emotion is. I'm not reading that because I don't feel it in myself. So
right.
there can be a mismatch on reading nonverbals with that. And we see a lot of people with autism and ADHD, almost I mean, I don't know. I've never even seen one who doesn't have a problem with your body space sense, you know, that it's really a part of it. But we've been talking about kind of the gross body, but there's also, we want to talk a little bit about the fine motor before we go, because I
Right.
really think that our body mapping starts out in the core, and then it gets to the fingers. And as little babies, at first they're doing this. And then in nursery school, what are we doing? Finger plays and things so that kids can start differentiating, feeling their fingers. And
Right.
people don't feel their hands. But again, when you get tired, hungry, excited, angry, we lose our sense of body and space really quickly. Those are things that just kind of cut it off. So when we get excited, what will you see a child who has weak body sense?
Yeah, the
You know,
flapping.
a lot of flapping of the hands. Why flapping of the hands? Because I can't feel my hands if I don't do that. I feel like I don't have any hands. And so that
Mittens almost. It's like having mittens. You don't have fingers. You've got mittens.
right, and mittens that are flapping around, so like little fins. So that is so to really, and just to really place this, when I'm doing math work with kids, I can't, when I have somebody who supposedly has dyscalculia, which means not being able to understand math or numbers, and sequencing a spatial idea, it really comes out of knowing your finger order. I tell you, I run into kids who are teens who don't even know the names of their fingers. They don't know
Right.
the names because they're just fingers. They're just all one thing, and they don't really think much about it. Do you think their handwriting can be good? No. You know, can they usually can't type very well either, to be honest. It's really a disability in a lot of ways. So but it's not hard to bring that in if you know what you're trying to do, because it's out of your joints, out of your body space. Maybe we can just show one activity here, just one thing. Activities in themselves are just one thing. No,
Before we get to that,
understanding
Jen,
things are more important. But
the one thing I'd like to add is we're going to see that you're going to see this in a therapy situation where you've got a therapist who's asking a child to put their tongue behind their teeth.
oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Right. And if your face is just one big thing, you don't know where your teeth are, and your tongue feels like a washcloth, right? You don't know how to do this. If they're asking you to differentiate your fingers and you've got mittens, you're looking at what they're doing and trying to replicate it, but you don't feel these things.
That's why they have to use mirrors often for
right.
work with the mouth, because the kids don't even know where.
So for people in a therapy situation, in a setting, you know, they're being asked to do things that they can look at and maybe replicate, but they don't feel them in their own bodies. And so you're going to see these things when you're asking a child or an adult to do therapy. You know, they don't know where these things are coming from. They're trying
They think they're pulling your leg. They're not
body
pulling your leg. They really don't know. I mean, that's
Yeah.
part of our gentle encouragement part, is you don't want, when people do things that are so, what? You don't know where your nose is? Like, it's just shocking to you, but you have to go, oh, well, let's do it together, you know? And so you have to make it be not so embarrassing, because it can be picked up quickly once a lot of the proprioceptors, the tactile system, the body space, you know, skin, etc., can all be mapped a bit.
Right. Yeah, with the body mapping.
Right. So let's just try one little activity. We're just going to do our finger pull, hug and pull. We're just going to put our fingers like this, slide them over, and we're going to hook it. Put your elbows down. We're going to go squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull. Okay. For somebody with proprioception or body space issues, that is not easy. As a matter of fact, we have to start a lot of people with one person doing it and the other person receiving it. And a lot of people can't even differentiate the squeeze and the pull, because they have no map of their muscles, no map of their function of their hand at all. And we're not talking about, I mean, it sounds like we're talking about people from like Mars or something, but honestly, this is very common with people who have handwriting problems, who have dyscalculia, who are just walking around every day, but they have anxiety. They don't know why. And like, there's a lot of times these things are coming out of body space thing. A lot of dysphoria, and I said it can be a sexual dysphoria because you're going, what is it? What is it? But it could be other things. I'm not saying it's everything in that department. There's lots going on there. Everything's complicated. But I always like to say, let's get these base level neurodevelopmental things taken care of, because they are the basis upon which everything's built. If we can get those in place, then all the other stuff can be looked at. It can be understood better. But when this is things shouting, your bottom brain shouting for attention, it's hard to hear anything else.
Well, it's the foundation of your house. If your house has a crack, foundation has a crack in it, everything else up above is going to be a little off, a little cattywampus, and it depends on how big that crack is. So how cattywampus everything above it may be. So once you get these things looked at and you get these things working properly, then in some regards, everything up above gets easier. But if there's still other things, issues that are going on, then you can address those. You know where they're coming from. It's easier to figure out what's happening. So
true. So thank you for this. This is our one. We're going to be doing 2 more on body space sense, and I'll just see you in a few minutes, and I hope you all enjoyed this.
Bye-bye.